Throughout my life, I've had the pleasure to live in communities ranked high on the list of best of. Best place to raise a family, best place to find a great job. 6 years ago, my family relocated to the Cedar Rapids area. And you'd be hard-pressed to find a category that our city is not listed on a best of list. Best place to raise children, 3 years straight. Tops for teachers, great place to start a business. And we are the #3 happiest city in America. I know, yes, give us a hand. But with all of those accolades, it doesn't necessarily hold true for all of our citizens. So how can we create opportunities for full participation so that all of our citizens feel like they belong and they are included? And moreover, what can we do as individuals to make sure that our city is a welcome place for all? When I was 10 years old, we had just moved into a new community. It was your typical suburban neighborhood. Tree-lined streets, family-friendly. But there were very few reflections of me outside of my family. Nevertheless, I was able to assimilate. I was curious and I was digging into my community, and I really felt like I connected, like I belonged. Each year, our 5th grade class would take the trip to Daniel Boone's home, 1 hour outside of our city. We would get on the bus full of excitement because all the lessons that we learned in class were finally going to come to life. Teachers would sit in the back because, of course, they didn't want to hear all the repetitive songs that we sung. While we would take that hour and our class leads would shout out that song and we would all join in on the chorus. We got to Daniel Boone's song. Now, Daniel Boone, and I'm going to age myself because I watched it as a child, so I felt quite comfortable singing the song. But here's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to need your help with this. I am going to attempt to sing the song, and I say attempt because I have to, full disclosure, I did not get the gift of singing. So, if you know the theme song for Daniel Boone, I just want you to hum it along as I attempt to put all of my energy into this song. So here we go. Daniel Boone was a man, yes, a big man, but the bear was bigger, so he ran like a nigger up the tree. Did I hear that correctly? I was frozen. We got into the 3rd verse and I couldn't move and I couldn't speak. Who on the bus would stop this? Surely my teacher would hear this and just put an immediate stop to it. But she didn't. All the other kids in the class, they just continued with the song, oblivious to the impact that this had on me. Now, as I thought older in life, and I thought back on my 5th grade year, I thought about things like the raised hand that was never acknowledged in class, the feeling of being invisible in a classroom with 25 students. But see, what I learned that day was even though I felt so connected and that I belonged to this community, that there were some members who didn't see me as belonging. I was the outsider. And I'm sure there are some of you who are in this room who thought you were connected and thought you were a part of that community, but you were the outsider simply because of your gender, your race, your sexual orientation, your socioeconomic status. Now that memory was just so vivid in my head, I just had to Google, make sure that I didn't make this up. Daniel Boone, racist song. And there it was in black and white, along with posts from people who could relate to my experience. And then others who would write, well, it's just a kid's song. It has no meaning. Now, could I say that my classmates thought of this as just a kid's song that had no meaning? No, I can't. But what I can say, and what I can say very clearly, is that negative stereotypes contributes to intolerance. And those kids' songs that we learned long time ago, and they were just innocent, do have long-lasting and harmful effects. So when we start to talk about connections, we have to start getting into how our brain works. Neuroscience teaches us that the brain is constantly connecting. It's searching for ways to belong and continuously trying to find those connections. As humans, we are social. We have to be. We have to be social so that we can procreate to survive. But what happens when we start to exclude? When we start to look at differences, and we only see differences as negative, and we use those differences to start excluding people so that they don't feel like they're a part of their community, so they feel like an outsider. Now, I have a lot of experience moving in and out of communities. To be exact, I've moved 8 times in the past 20 years. Why, you ask? I think I heard a sigh out there. I am a military spouse. My husband recently retired after 31 years in the military. And what the military teaches you is the value of a strong, connected community. With frequent relocations, you make fast friends because you know in 3 years, the cycle's going to repeat itself. New friends, new home, new community. A military base, when you think about it, is the definition of inclusion. You have diverse people from all across this country coming together for a common purpose, service to our country. We take care of our own. We were the village. And the great thing about a military base, and I don't know how many military people are in the audience, but there was always a welcome get-together when your family moved in and the celebratory going away party when you left. See, when we lay out the welcome mat in our communities, people have that sense of belonging, like they belong, and that's what we need to build in our communities. So with that, we fast forward and we start to think about me and how I got to this place where I am. Now, in my professional life, I spent the past 20 years or so as executive director in various organizations, working with communities and giving voice to those that are marginalized. But to be perfectly honest, often I found my voice was marginalized. So I had to work every time. Remember, 8 times I moved to a new community. I had to work to forge new connections, to build my network, all to develop that sense of belonging. And what I would like to offer here is just some practical tools, some things that has helped me along the way as I transitioned into my new community. First, individuals make a community. And as individuals, we have to acknowledge that we all have biases. Implicit bias is the unconscious attribution of qualities to a particular group influenced by our experiences. And we're constantly bombarded with these negative thoughts, images, maybe a song from a long time ago. It predisposes us to make snap judgments. So the only way we get rid of all those negative images is we have to fill that space with something new, something that's more informed. So when we talk about biases and we talk about communities, communities are the way that they are simply by decisions made of people who were here before us. And what we also know is there are certain communities that barriers exist. But you know what? You don't think about those barriers when they are not your experience. So let me ask this. How many right-handed people do we have in the room? And I can't see anybody, but if you're right-handed, raise your hand. And do I have any left-handed people in the room? Okay. So our society is overwhelmingly right-handed, yet 10% of our population is left-handed. Now, if you're right-handed, you never had to think about that left-handed person that has to go over the flap to zip their jeans. Or when you were in school and you got that last pair of scissors, the one with the red handle, and you tried to cut and cut, but it just wouldn't work. I would also say, how many of us have seen that? Typical lecture hall. And for my lefties, does that look familiar? See, no one woke up and said, let's make this difficult for lefties. I dare to say that the things we talked about, the zippers on our jeans and all these things that we take for granted as right-handed people, that it was developed by us right-handed people. And we didn't take the needs or the wants of left-handed people into our minds when we thought about this. So here's what I would challenge you to do. Find anything that you do today and just take it from the perspective of a person who is left-handed. And I'm not even going to ask my left-handed people to do that, because you do that every day, so we appreciate you. But for those of you who are right-handed, what you need to do is, number one, acknowledge biases. And know that even though you may not be aware, biases do exist. And put yourself in someone else's shoes. And that way you start to fill that space with different and more informed decision making. Second, I would say, seek knowledge. Be curious and seek your own understanding. The way our society looks today and the way our world looks today is going to be very different. Our society is becoming more diverse, more culture, a rich history of people coming into this land. But that does not equate to acceptance. We have to make sure that we want to seek the knowledge. I have been asked to be the guide on so many journeys. It's crazy. But guess what? I cannot speak for an entire race. And you have to want to be able to learn for yourself. And we have a city that is rich with museums and staff that are eager to help you. Attend community forums. See if there is a cultural fair that you can attend. Try to be that one person, because this is my life every single day. Most times I step into a meeting, I am the only person that looks like me. Again, when you flip that switch and you think about when you step into a room, who else do you see in the room? We have in our community high schoolers that are hosting social justice conferences. I love it. We are building our benches with the next generation of game changers, and kudos to those teachers who are supporting that. Third thing I would say is challenge yourself. When you walk into a room, does everyone look like you? In your work, your place of worship, make sure that you are looking, because here's what we know about change. Change does not happen when we're comfortable. If you want to change it, you have to challenge it. And that means that we got to get out of our blind spots, because when we're comfortable, we take that path of least resistance. So make sure you challenge yourself, and here's what I would say. When you see something wrong, call it out. I'm sure in the news that you've seen people who can't sit in coffee shops, or people who can't put their luggage in the car after an Airbnb. These things aren't new. Trust me, they've always been happening. But with the camera and social media, these things go viral within 24/7. And last, believe. Believe that you can make a difference. Believe that you have the power to make a change, because we're not going to wait on the next great leader. We are the leaders. It starts with one person, and thus the ripple. Start with yourself, then your family, then your work, then your community. Here's what we know. Individuals make a community. I'm going to say that again. Individuals make a community. And we each have the ability to build a community where all feel welcome. And we build that community by making sure that we build meaningful relationships and connections, by acknowledging our biases, by seeking understanding, by making sure that we challenge, and when we see wrong, we call it out. And last but not least, that we believe that we can do it. And when we do that, we leverage all voices in our community. You are the average of the 5 people who surround you. I ask, who surrounds you? Because change begins with all of us, and it starts with each and every one of us. Thank you.